Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Aquaculture UK Sustainability Summit. My name is Sherry Arvonio, and I am the Event Director for Aquaculture UK. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the third session of our summit. We're just seeing the numbers go up, so I'll let a few people come in and join us, but whilst they do, I wanted to cover off a few points to ensure you make the most out of your session with us today. Firstly, we want to say a massive thank you to our sponsors, DSM and Viramaris. Without them, our Sustainability Summit wouldn't be possible, so thank you. All of the sessions today will be recorded and available to download via our website at the end of the week. So don't worry if you miss anything or if you want to share with your colleagues. This is a great opportunity for you to engage with the speakers and ask questions. So please use the Q&A function that can be found on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. At the end of the session, the speakers will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible. We'd love to hear what you're learning during the summit and what you have enjoyed most. So please get social using hashtag Aquaculture UK Summit, tagging at Aquaculture UK. I think that's all from me. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome our speaker and host for this session's panel discussion, Tavish Scott, the CEO of the Scottish Salmon Producers Organisation. We hope you all enjoy the session, and over to you, Tavish.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Great pleasure to be joining the Aquaculture UK conference on sustainability this afternoon. We're very conscious that this is a virtual event, and it's a bit like talking in a tent. You're not quite sure who's outside, but we look forward to seeing the questions later during the session this afternoon. I'm going to very briefly say a little bit about our sustainability charter on behalf of the Scottish Salmon Producers Organisation, and then I've got three excellent speakers who are going to add to that, or indeed bring it to life with some observations about different aspects of what we're doing in Scotland on sustainability. The charter is a document, a live document that we take very seriously indeed. For the salmon sector in Scotland, it's very much our bedrock for the future. It commits us in no uncertain terms through many actions and indeed important principles to being net zero in greenhouse gas emissions in line with Scottish Government and international targets. And it commits us to play our role in the recovery from COVID that we and all of you have been through over this past period of time. That social and economic renewal is vitally important in every community right across Scotland, and we as a salmon sector are determined to play a very positive role in that. Our charter, importantly, will not just be measured by us, but independently assessed, and we will publish and report on it as well. I come from a background in different aspects of professional life where there are many charters and many strategies and many other documents that can at times gather dust on the top shelves of learned filing cases. Our industry is determined to avoid that, and that's why, as I say, we will publish and report on the collective progress that we as a trade body and our member companies make over the coming 12 months and indeed the coming years. We have as a sector a lower carbon footprint than most other farming sectors. We use less fresh water and produce more edible meat for every tonne of feed used. We've also been investing on a multi-million-pound scale to minimise our use of veterinary medicines, reduce our impact on the seabed, work within regulatory limits on what the marine environment can naturally sustain, and safeguard other freshwater and marine life. And perhaps most importantly, we recognise that that is only a starting point. There is so much more to do, and that's what the charter and the work of our member companies drives us forward to do. And why is that important? I wanted to finish with a couple of observations about local communities and why we need to be and are sustainable in everything we do. I'm from Shetland, that's my home, and the salmon sector in Shetland is worth £114 million to that local economy. £69 million of that spend is with local companies, our supply chain, and that's across all kinds of business. 410 direct jobs on 44 marine sites. The salmon sector is 21% of Scotland's overall production coming from Shetland. So that's just one small part of our country where this sector plays an enormous role in terms of the people, the local economy, and the environment. And if you think of islands, just as with Orkney in the Western Isles and all the way down the west coast of Scotland, we depend on that pristine environment. We farm in it, we look after it, and we're determined to play our role in conjunction with all and the many stakeholders we interact with, both the regulatory community, the many NGOs to whom we have excellent relations, and other organisations, to ensure that is the case now and for the future as well. So with those few words of introduction, before we hear from our other guests this afternoon, we're going to play a short video, which again I hope helps to give some context to our sustainability charter, and also provides a very, to my mind, beautiful pictorial introduction to the deeper discussion we're about to have. Thank you. Thank you. There's a wonderful soundtrack that goes with that, but don't worry if you didn't hear that, or indeed didn't hear any of it. Believe me, there's a wonderful soundtrack that goes with it. And what we'll do is make sure that you can see it's on our website, SSPO website. And for any of you who'd like, as it were, a virtual copy, we'll be delighted to send that on. I hope you got enough out of the pictures, if nothing else, without the stirring soundtrack that goes with it. Thank you very much. I'm now going to ask Dr. Ian Beryl, the Scottish Salmon Producers Organisation's Head of Technical, to talk through the work that we're doing to be world leading in animal welfare. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Tavish. Yes, my name's Ian Beryl. I work for, I'm the head of technical at SSPO. I'm delighted to introduce this subject of fish welfare. It's a topic that's close to my heart. I'm a bit of a self-confessed fish nerd. Fish have been a part of my life, all of my life. And I've been fortunate enough to have a career around fish, and that's included some research work on fish welfare, but also my current role, which is heavily focused on fish health and welfare. I think the concept of fish welfare is quite, from an academic perspective, it's quite a difficult one. It's quite complex. A lot of philosophizing going on, and rightly so, and I think that should continue. But I think from a practical perspective, I think most of us understand and know the concept of welfare and know what good and bad welfare looks like. Bad welfare, we kind of know, it's the signs that an animal is not in a good place. Good welfare, I think we could probably crudely summarize as, is an animal happy? Is it leading a good life? And that's perhaps more difficult to assess, and it's certainly difficult from a fish perspective, but I will come back to that in a moment. For me, fish health and welfare is central to everything a fish farmer does. You know, we can talk about moral and ethical responsibilities, we can talk about clear production benefits, economic benefits, but I firmly believe that fish farmers care about fish welfare because it's fundamentally the right thing to do. They want, and we want, our fish to lead good lives. That's why as well that I think it's so relevant that it sits within our charter, because Also, welfare is a fundamental point with regards to sustainability metrics. It's got clear links to environment, clear links to social, and clear links to economic benefits. So it does sit within our charter, and I'm very pleased that welfare is one of our pledges that sits, or one of our areas that works front and center within the charter. And there are a number of specific pledges around fish welfare within that charter. But if we broadly summarize those, I think that charter seeks for us in Scotland to be the global leaders in fish welfare and improving and ensuring that our fish have good lives. How are we going to deliver that? Well, we also in Scotland have something which is world leading, and that's our Code of Good Practice, which is a hugely important document in our day-to-day lives. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the code and how we can improve that. The code was initially developed upon the pillars of biosecurity and fish health, and welfare sits within those very intrinsically. But we need to do a full review, and what we want to do is bring a greater prominence to fish welfare within that document, so that it's enforced across the farming sector. We've done it through a number of actions, and we've included engagement with relevant stakeholders. And I think both they and us are believing that we have the view that we're in a pretty good place where fish welfare is concerned. But that shouldn't stop us trying to strengthen that code. And also, I think what we probably need to do is provide a better evidence base for people to understand and see our good welfare practices, and the code is a way to do that. The piece of work that we're doing is a bit of a start and finish job, but that's not to say that the actual activity will finish when we conclude our review. Fish welfare now will be reviewed within the code going forward on a regular basis to make sure that what we're doing remains up to date. And that's where I want to shift to this idea of good welfare. We've been looking with as part of that review as how we can start to consider good welfare and that whole concept of an animal leading a good life. You know, generally the welfare focus in livestock sectors is around assessing and avoiding poor welfare, and for good reason. But also a lot of the other sectors and ours are looking at these sort of wider ways of looking at the good life, how an animal is feeling. And it's really difficult. It's difficult to make that assessment. So what we did as part of our work is we put a small working group together to try and start answering this. And in actual fact, the answer was kind of staring us back in the face, because we have always been assessing good welfare. We just haven't really been quantifying it and putting a number to it. So when I go onto a farm, and I don't go on as much as I would like to, but when I do get to go on a farm, I always have a bog standard question that I say to people, you know, how are the fish doing? And the people working on the farm always have a response. They always know how well they're swimming, their feeding behavior, you know, their general behavior overall, where they're in the water column. And they'll be able to comment on that. And they'll generally have a sense as to whether they're doing well or whether they're doing not. And this for me is classic stockmanship. It's the same as a sheep farmer who leads against his gate, looks at his flock and says, you know, there's something not right here, or I know that individual animals are in a bad place, or they're doing well. So that's the next exciting phase for us, is how we start to think about quantifying that. It's not going to be easy, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring the right people together to do that. And the right people certainly include those farmers who work day to day on the farms and can do this probably without too much thought, and it just comes naturally to them. So that's where I'm going to bring this to a close, and really just summarize to say that we are going to be doing a better job of demonstrating how we protect against poor welfare in the code. We're going to be better narrating within the code about good welfare, and we're going to be looking in the future as to how we can start assessing that. So I'll close there and look forward to some interesting discussions later on, and I'll hand back to Tavish.
Thank you very much, Ian. That was splendid, and nice mention of the crofter leaning on the farm gate there. Tick for the box there. We're now going to move effortlessly to Kate Stronach. Kate is Maui's Sustainability and Compliance Manager, and Kate this afternoon is going to give some thought and provide some interesting analysis of Maui's work on housing and community sustainability. So Kate, over to you.
Hello, thanks for that intro, Tavish. So yeah, I'm Kate Stronach. I'm the Sustainability and Compliance Manager for Maui. And our farms are located in extremely rural and remote areas of the Highlands, where housing stock is in short supply. Nowhere is the shortage of affordable housing more acute than it is in the island communities. A fish farm creates jobs for local people living on the island and can also attract new people or enable people to return home to the island for long-term employment. But a farm is unviable without housing for those who work on it. When we began looking at the possibility of establishing a salmon farm at Muck, the lack of available and affordable housing was a challenge we knew we'd have to find a solution for. This solution was for us to build new homes on the island with overall investment in the project in the region of £250,000. Starting in 2015 and completing in 2019, 3 houses were built, designed to be visually appealing. The properties are wooden clad and sit in a location agreed as the most suitable for the development. Each is a high quality build of a respectable 3-bedroom size with great insulation to be energy efficient. They provide accommodation for our site staff, of which there are 11 in total. Our site manager lives permanently on the island with his family in one of the 3 houses, and the other 2 are used on a rotational basis with our other staff who work a shift pattern. The presence on the island of our staff also has wider benefits, providing work for a cleaner at the properties and supporting local boatmen and businesses, and having families present on the island increases the primary school role as well. A new pontoon was also installed, and it's used on a shared basis with Maui and non-Maui vessels. While Maui currently use and maintain these properties, the aim is for the properties to be an asset to the island, and should operations on Muck ever cease, then the housing is handed over to the island population. Following on from the success at Muck, when a site at Rum was proposed, aiding the development of housing that would include accommodation for our staff was seen as a natural step. On Rum, we provided financial support for a local housing development by the Isle of Rum Development Trust in collaboration with the Highlands Small Community Housing Trust that has provided office space and accommodation for Maui staff, as well as rental properties for the island. With Rum now running successfully, our focus has turned back to an established site at Colonsay, which was still feeling the effects of a lack of available housing and had a community keen to find a solution to the ongoing issue of providing homes on the island. Entering a new phase of developments, Maui are working with the Colonsay Community Development Company to build a solution, a coalition supported by Agala Butte Council, Highlands and Islands Enterprise and the Community Housing Trust. Recently, planning has been granted to build up to 12 homes on the island. 6 of the buildings will be retained by the Colonsay Community Development Company, 3 will be self-build plots, and 3 will provide accommodation to our site staff and be maintained by Maui. And as with our other developments, will revert to the community should we ever cease operations. But housing is just one area in which we are working to meet our social responsibilities. We wish to support the communities in which we work and have supported and contributed to multiple projects over the years. To give some recent examples, we work with the Camanachd Association, the governing body of Scotland's iconic Indigenous sport of shinty, and this premier sponsorship has continued into its 4th decade. This year, recognising the central role of shinty in bringing many of our rural communities together and the struggle felt by so many young people during lockdown, we've increased our support with the Maui Children and Young Person Development Fund. This fund will support shinty clubs in their development and is focused on enhancing opportunities for children and young people. Believing young people to be key to the future, we also work with the Outward Bound Trust, this year marking a decade of support. Currently, together we are working on special projects that have seen the normal outdoor adventures brought in school during the COVID-19 pandemic to help pupils who might not otherwise have had this opportunity. And we have another project to be announced that will take place before the summer holidays. During the pandemic, we wanted to look outside the box for other areas we could help in. The NHS Salmon project on Skye, seen the Isle of Skye Smokehouse and Maui team up to provide smoked salmon to staff at 2 hospitals and staff and residents at 2 care homes on the Isle of Skye. On further work with local smokehouses, we have also partnered up with a start-up smokehouse on Colonsay, and our locally raised salmon will be the raw ingredients supplied for the business that plans to open this autumn. Additionally, we have ongoing projects such as contributing to the installation of high-speed broadband connections on Rum and Muck, purchasing defibrillators for remote communities, and continuing our support through community funds, which aim to allow achievement of the goals of the people in these areas. A recent benefit from which has materialised in Carradale, where the local community successfully taken ownership of their village shop. These are just a few examples of where we are working to be socially responsible employers and good neighbours in the communities we operate. We look forward to continuing this work and increasing our positive social impact now and in the years to come. So that's kind of a summary of where we sit with that. So I will pass back to Tavish now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Kate. That was just excellent. Many of us would have particular memories of Camanachd Cup finals at the Bucht in Inverness, sponsored by Maui or before them. And but maybe your wider illustration of the work you're doing in islands with housing was particularly important and an excellent illustration of the links between member companies and SSPO and then real outcomes in terms of the stability charter that Ian introduced. So thank you for that. We're now going to move to Joanna Peeling. Joanna is the HR boss at Maui, and Joanna's going to talk about a particularly important area for all of us, and that's both the recruitment of new people into our sector, but also the incredible level of skills and expertise that we do have across salmon farming and how Maui go about that. So Joanna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Am I okay to start? Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Tavish. So yeah, my name is Joanna Peeling. I am. Oh, I don't think I've started my video. There we go. So my name is Joanna Peeling. I'm head of HR for Maui, and I guess my plan today really is just to spend a few minutes talking about sustainability and really what that means in the Scottish salmon sector when it comes to people. So when I think about sustainability, I think what I'm thinking about is how are we supporting that long-term balance in our communities for future generations? And of course, what that means is there needs to be future generations. It needs to be possible to raise future generations. So that takes time. And while the employment we offer in itself is good, it offers a level of financial security, it's jobs, but it's not just about jobs. If we're talking about raising future generations, we're talking about genuine opportunities to grow and develop and progress through people through a whole career. So I guess we're going to look at where we are now and what we're doing about that. So where we are now, I think in these few minutes, I'm just going to focus on aquaculture. Of course, there's a knock-on effect when it comes to our supply chain, when it comes to the feed businesses, when it comes to the processing businesses, but I'll focus specifically on aquaculture and the remote and rural locations in which we operate. I'm not going to focus too hard on the locations. I guess if you're at an Aquaculture UK conference, you're probably aware of the locations, but what that means when it comes to people is that nearly a quarter of the population are age 65 plus, and what we've got in our areas of operation are net out migration of young people. So as in the next few years, the population of working age is expected to fall, and we will be increasingly reliant on positive net migration into the areas. But young people are overwhelmingly saying they would like to return to live and work in those areas if that were feasible. There's factors on which they kind of caveat that, which is around healthcare and affordable housing. And of course, Kate's just talked about affordable housing. But the other factors they cite are pay levels, high quality jobs, and opportunities for career progression. And that's really where we come in. They want to come, and we want them to come. So what are we going to do about that? So we're working really hard in terms of kind of three areas. We're looking at how we attract and retain new talent. We're looking at then once people are in, how are we investing in our employees, and also our employees themselves, that the people who work for us, are the diversity, inclusion, and equality of the industry. So again, I've only got a few minutes, so there's so much to talk about. I'll try and just skip through as much as I can. But in terms of attracting and retaining new talent, we're thinking about where that comes from. So we're engaging right from primary school level now. Aquaculture is on the STEM agenda, is on the STEM curriculum from primary school now, where it hasn't been previously. At secondary level, we're making sure aquaculture is part of the careers advice as pupils choose their options and think about their future careers. They are being advised of the subjects they can choose to steer them into aquaculture careers and the opportunities that they offer. We're talking about kind of apprenticeship, so it's the top, the kind of school leavers, both UHI and Argyll and Bute are offering modern apprenticeships in aquaculture, and then right up to university levels of education, we are engaging with them and changing the curriculum. So, for example, the vet schools in Scotland didn't used to include salmon on their curriculum at all. That's changed now. Marine biologists are learning about aquaculture, and even food scientists, people who perhaps hadn't considered that the opportunities to live and work in extraordinary locations. You know, it's really about how we position our industry. The second strand on that is what are we doing once we get them? How are we retaining them? How are we investing? So the most important thing I think that has happened for us recently is the development of technology to enable us to offer learning and progression opportunities to people where they are. Online platforms enable us to make sure that people can genuinely progress from starting on a farm as a farm technician to becoming a manager, but taking any career path within that, whether that's fish health or whether that's operations or whether that's supply chain, there's a path through. We're working really hard to be able to do that, and for example, making sure that every single person in our organisations have access to qualifications and externally accredited qualifications. And as they progress, of course, then we have to look at our reward structures and make sure we're offering that good pay, which is what the young people are citing is subject to getting them to bring it all back, to bring them back to the areas. So there's so much more to do, that we're working hard on diversity and inclusion. I think when we're talking about equal treatment, that starts with inclusion. Everybody has to feel valued for the contribution they make, no matter their gender, no matter their ethnic background, no matter their physical capabilities, and that starts internally with education and moves externally to make sure people understand what's on offer. And then we look at how we carry on doing what we're doing in terms of successful graduate programs and widening those opportunities to people who haven't wanted to leave the area and can do a parallel fast track progression. And then we're working with SPO on the Sustainability Charter and the commitment to the cross-industry mentoring scheme to attract and retain those new people into the business. So we're working very hard on a lot of different things and trying to bring that all together. But I think most of all, we need to be better at shouting about ourselves and what's already there and what we do. I think, you know, when it comes to it, those entering the jobs market today, they're all too aware of the global threats facing the planet. They're expecting and wanting to enter a world of work which is committed to acting responsibly and to minimising the impact that their company is having on the environment and to giving something back. I think if you're a bright individual with a choice of job offers, you're going to choose a company that's more socially responsible. So the work that we're doing here, the commitment of everybody in the industry and the Sustainability Charter, it means we really are quite well placed to become the sector of choice for people who are looking to make a positive difference. So that's me. I've probably talked too long, sorry, but thanks very much.
No, thank you, Joanna. That was absolutely brilliant and a fantastic point. We'll take many of those issues up in questions, and there's quite a few questions that I think hook into your presentation, and particularly your point about young people coming back home, as it were, to the Highlands and Islands of Scotland for really good jobs. That's certainly, again, as a Shetlander, I can entirely relate to that really important point. So could I encourage people to put a question in the Q&A box if you have one? I've got some that have already come in, and we'll just go into those with Joanna, Kate, and Ian this afternoon. But please feel free to enter any thoughts or questions that you've got to us. Let's start with a more general one, and then we can maybe go into the specifics of that Kate and Joanna talked about. So, Ian, there's a question about the benefits of the Sustainability Charter and how the benefits should be implemented. Would you just like to talk about how we look to measure the outcomes of our Sustainability Charter and working with our members to make sure it happens? Would you be able to cover that one for us?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a key activity. It's the primary activity for SSPO at the moment. The charter is our main focus for the next 25 years. And we internally have our own structures for dealing with that. And we've got our various trackers, and we keep an active focus on that. But there are a number of specific mechanisms that we're doing. Clearly, in terms of reporting, we have the responsibility, and we've committed to an annual report. And that will very clearly demonstrate what we've achieved in the last year and how that measures with previous years. We've got our first one of those coming up later in the year. And we've got a number of working groups within the organisation, established groups, which will allow us to deliver on those functions and bring the right people together. Overlaid with that is we have also put in place a kind of a sounding board group within our organisation, which is a kind of a sustainability group, which has representation from all across the sector, people of different levels within their career, young individuals, older individuals. So we get a breadth of views that we can sound ideas, what should be looked at next, how should we approach this? And then ultimately, of course, our SSPO board oversee and make sure and keep us in check to make sure we're leading and delivering. The most important thing for the public audience will be that annual report, though. They'll be able to see that and see our development of this over the next 25 years.
And just on that last point, Ian, really important point about the annual report. Lots of organisations and indeed individuals will have views about what we're doing. Are we planning to encourage that kind of feedback on what we publish later in the year?
I think we would always welcome feedback. Yeah, this is our sector's charter. It's not SSPO's charter. It's not anybody else's. It's the sectors collectively, and we want everyone within the sector to get behind it and be a part of it and see our development over the next 25 years. So if that report or those reports aren't quite hitting where we want them to be, we need to hear about that, and we need to get that moving forward.
Great, thank you for that. Kate, I've got a question that's come in on housing. Lots of people are interested in how you've gone about putting together those partnerships with islands and with housing trusts and others that you mentioned about, I think, the 3 island groups that you specifically talked to. I imagine as an islander myself, that's a pretty easy process, because islanders would be on the whole delighted to see a company coming in to invest in housing that otherwise wouldn't be there. But just how did you go about that? And was it quite easy to strike up those relationships with local housing trusts and local people in order to make the right decisions about both where you put the houses and then what kind of houses they would be?
Yes, so there's 2 key ways in which the kind of housing has been developing. One has been tied to where a new site is proposed, and the other is, such as Colin say, where we're going back to an island which has already kind of agreed to aquaculture presence and has kind of voted for us to be there. So there's 2 strands to it. With the first one, it is a kind of a discussion that happens alongside our proposal to site a salmon farm there. So it's very inclusive, and it's built into everything from the start. On the second course, this can either be through ongoing kind of need from our side, but also from the communities themselves raising to us that this is something they're looking into and coming to us for that support, knowing that it is an area that we're keen to support and where we can.
Great, and the development trusts and the housing trusts that you described, were they there before Maui chose to start those projects? Did you find people willing to start that process with you when you began looking into siting of farms in those particular localities?
I don't have the full details on all of the different trusts that we've worked with. It's my understanding a lot of them were already in existence. and some of them have sort of come into existence in the recent years with the ever-growing pressure for housing to be available.
Great. Now that's super. And one question which I suppose could be considered to be slightly cheeky because it's about shinty and why not other sports. But I mean, I guess I get this as someone who comes from the area that shinty is just the national game of the Highlands in many ways. But your company, Maui, and indeed its predecessors have sponsored shinty for years and years and years. What are your other sponsorship areas? Do you do other sports and arts, or what's your kind of thinking and plan on that point?
Well, like you say, we have a long history with shinty. It's into, I believe I said, it's its 4th decade of support, and it is Scotland's Indigenous sport, and it is something that a lot of us are very passionate about. In terms of sponsorship and support for other areas, that's always there if there's kind of the community desire for it. So things like perhaps funding new strips, and we have processes that can be found through our online pages to allow communities to essentially get in touch with us and request participation with us on areas that they're keen for us to focus on.
Great. So yes, ongoing sponsorship programs and Mowi open to that. No, that's lovely. Thank you. There's one for Joanna on young people. I suspect, Joanna, just a generic question in many ways about attracting young people who may have who were brought up and went to school in the Highlands and Islands to coming back to the area to work in fish farming. The question is really around the split, I suppose, between vocational education and academic education. In other words, young people who've been to university. What is the kind of split now? I mean, are we as a sector attracting as many young people back from university into the Highlands and Islands to work in fish farming as we do from school and who've taken vocational qualifications?
I guess I would say we're attracting more, but not enough yet. In terms of split, I think it's few enough that we notice when people come back to their home area to live and work. We are quite good at attracting I guess people who don't want to necessarily leave for tertiary education and can then join us and get a qualification while working. So there's everybody who joins Maui has got the opportunity to do that kind of level 4 qualification. And we can take that on further for them if they choose to do that. I think where we can continue to improve is getting people to join because of the qualifications. You know, this is the job I want. This is the job I want to do. This is the career of choice. This fits with me in terms of flexibility and ethics and sustainability. This is the place I want to be, and it allows me to progress through my career. And eventually, if that works for me and if that works for the organisation, I can get to leadership levels because there's a mix of both vocational and academic qualifications.
No, that's really interesting, and relate that to the environment, because I suppose young people at school, when we have them on farms or just our own children and that kind of thing, much more aware of the environment and in an international sense, in a global sense, than perhaps we were when. I'm definitely older than you, Joanna, so don't take this the wrong way, but when we were at school. But which is a great thing, which is generally a great thing. People care about the planet that we inhabit. What's your take on people who are so much more driven now by that environmental background and that of environmental awareness, and do they want to come and work for us as well?
That's a really interesting question, actually. I think there's kind of two angles to that. So I think the people who are aware of it and in that type of field in their education, so for example marine biology or environmental sciences, yes, I think once they're aware of our industry, they're quite comfortable to come and work in the industry because they understand the, I guess, ethical and sustainable credentials. And I think where we can improve and get better is people doing qualifications where actually we could offer equal, if not better, in terms of career opportunities, interest, work-life balance, and a future for them, and they're not aware of our industry to the extent that, you know, they see what they, I guess they see some of the activism and are put off. So we need to improve our voice around the credentials we do have, because I think there's people who already know are quite comfortable. People who don't know yet, you know, we've got to shout louder, I think.
Yeah, that's a super point, and I couldn't agree with that more. It's part of our task as a trade body, in conjunction with all members, to work really hard on the way we present ourselves to that outside world, which of course the charter is core and central to. Ian, would you like to pick up that point as well? Because I think Joanna's made a really interesting point and an important point about how we present ourselves to the outside world. So for many people in the Highlands and Islands very familiar with salmon farming, take it as read. But shall we say the central belt of Scotland probably doesn't know anything about our sector at all. Do you think the Charter, Ian, helps with that in explaining, I suppose you might loosely say, the context of our sector, and how do we go about making sure that more people are alive to our sustainability credentials and what we're doing in terms of the point you were making in your earlier remarks about the welfare of fish?
I think the Charter has a huge role to play here. It puts an onus on our sector to demonstrate what we are doing. I think we have historically done lots of really, really good stuff and really, really good things, quite clearly. You know, we are a huge success story. But we need to get better at narrating that and being very, very clear about what we are doing and why we are doing it and what our end goal is. And where the Charter is concerned, those are all things that speak very heavily to what individuals throughout the UK and throughout the globe are looking for now, and rightly so. You know, improved understanding of sustainability, concern around environmental issues. And so we now have a requirement and responsibility within that document to push that forward and let everybody know about that. You know, when we focus in on the welfare stuff, you know, when we deliver that and when we conclude this piece of work, there will undoubtedly be some narrative around that. We need to then roll that out amongst those working with the sector, so they know how the changes within the code will impact them. And we need to make sure that our stakeholders and the people who are influenced or listen to our stakeholders make sure they're fully aware of everything we do. So I think the Charter has a huge role to play in that whole narrative piece that we've got. And hopefully it will go, you know, we hope it's Scotland, but we hope it's wider as well. You know, I mean, this is a globally leading document as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's a brilliant link, Ian, because we've got a couple of questions on the international perspective and one on innovation. So we'll come back to the innovation question in a minute or two. But the question, I'm going to stay with you, Ian, if that's okay, yeah, you thought you're getting away there, but not quite yet, on the international perspective. And I'll link to Joanna on this one in a little minute or two as well, given how many international people we have working in Scotland in salmon farming. But the question on the international perspective, is simply what are we learning about how protein is being produced in other parts of the world and in other parts of aquaculture, shrimp and carp and tilapia, for example. Do you think there are things that we're learning now from international experience that help us in Scotland in the context of sustainability and in the context of our charter?
I think in terms of the aquaculture arena, we probably, in fairness, are leading the way in many areas. That's not to say we can't learn, and that's definitely not the case. But I think if we take animal production and actually food production in its entirety, there's a lot that we can learn. And if we look at innovations in areas, for example, in feed sourcing, particularly the use of insect meals and the development of those kind of technologies, we can learn from those. You know, those are probably more associated with other activities and would traditionally have perhaps other streams or avenues by which those feed ingredients would go. Those are of huge interest to us with the natural life cycle of the salmon. But we're also learning from, but also I think leading with regards to wider resourcing and sourcing of ingredients. The sustainability of the feed ingredients, for example, is probably the most important area with which we can deliver on that. Responsible activities in terms of where we get our plant land-based materials, where we get our marine ingredients, making sure that we have certifications which demonstrate what we are doing. All of these things are very important, and we can learn from that and we can draw from that. But I would like to see us as, or I do see us as very much as a global leader and the one sort of leading the charge. We have a Scottish focus here, but let's not forget we do have global companies operating within this aquaculture field, and particularly in salmon farming, and that has huge benefits in the fact that we can draw our expertise from huge numbers of people who are very skilled in this area. So leading the science, and where the science isn't there, driving forward the science is kind of what I think we are good at.
Great, and that's again a super link, Joanna, to people in the sector. Would you just like to talk about all the international folks that we have? Of course, Maui, a particularly good example of that, but it's true, I think it would be fair to say across our sector, we attract great people into Scotland to come live and work here, who've maybe undertaken university degrees in different parts of the world and want to see what's happening here and want to work here. Could you give us a flavour of that?
Yes, yeah, I think you're right. We are really lucky. We attract people from all around the globe in terms of, in fact, I hesitate to say it, I think awareness of aquaculture is higher in other countries than it is in the rest of the UK when you step away from Scotland. And we get, in terms of graduate applications, we get a lot more from other countries than we do from within the UK. So that's absolutely something we need to focus on and work on. But what that does, that brings to us a kind of sharing of knowledge and expertise. So as we recruit people from all around the world, we've got people from all over Europe, but people from South America, from the North Americas, from all over the world, and they bring with them different ideas and a fresh pair of eyes, and frankly a slightly different curriculum in terms of the education they've had, and so we continue to get new ideas and ways of doing things, and our role is to kind of, we were just saying there that if our role is to lead the way and drive and be at the forefront of an industry, then that kind of international perspective is critical. We live in a world where you're not competing with your local competitors anymore. You're competing with your global players. So we need that input.
Great. No, that's super. Thank you for that. Could we move on to innovation? A couple of questions on innovation. Ian, if it's all right, I'm going to go back to you on this one first of all. The question is, what role does innovative technology have to play in the future sustainability for the aquaculture industry? I suppose that's a question both about here in Scotland, but also potentially internationally as well. So in what we do to be more sustainable, innovation has a big innovation and science, I suppose, has a big role. What's your perspective on that one?
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it comes as no surprise, I would hope for most, that we as a sector have become hugely successful in a relatively short period of time in farming terms, and that for me, our history is clearly associated with our willingness to look at and take on new and clever innovations. Are looking on with regards to health management, for example, looking at vaccine development. When we started looking at that, nobody really knew whether it was possible with fish, but we took it forward and look what it's done to our good health and welfare metrics now, and that will continue into the future. And we see that very much with some of the technologies around perhaps more the infrastructure of our farming setups, our ability where appropriate to capture waste or look at capturing waste, or to deal with some of those concerns around our environmental interactions. Technology is hugely important there. And when we look at farming on the land, there's a lot more move now towards the use of recirculation systems in our freshwater production. It's a perfect place for it. And that has got huge innovations. That's been a technology that's been in place for quite a number of years now, but when you see the advancement we've made, it's been quite stark. and so we have a lot of clever people, I think, within our sector who can lead forward those developments and those innovations. But also we have a lot of clever academic departments that we need to draw on. And having everybody coming together, along with those equipment suppliers who are also driving this forward, it's a no-brainer that we're embracing innovation. The one thing I would say is we as a sector, I don't believe, are ever afraid of looking at and at least considering any idea, even the ones that look very, very safe, even the ones that perhaps look a little bit wacky. If somebody's got some evidence for that, let's have a look at it. Let's see what we can do with that. Let's not be shy. Let's look at them all.
Great, and I should provide a shout out here to SAKE as well, who provide an essential role and are great partners for us in terms of the investment they make in innovation of all the kinds that Ian's just described. So a really important organisation for all of us in terms of the work that we're doing on innovation. Our member companies are doing innovation. Again, Ian, so staying with you, there's a couple of questions on a kind of code of good practice and on third-party certification. So we can maybe roll these into one. The first question is kind of, what is the status of the code of good practice? How important is it, and what role does it play? You'll forgive me, I'm paraphrasing the questions here. And the related question is on third-party certification. In other words, our member companies, and I'm sure Joanna and Kate are very knowledgeable about this as well, are certified by many, many independent bodies, both national ones and indeed international ones, both from supermarkets all the way through the chain to others as well. Would you like to, Ian, just give us a kind of flavour on code of good practice and then third-party certification, again in the context of sustainability? Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, the code is hugely important to everything we do, and everything we do feeds into sustainability in one way or another. Certainly those three pillars of sustainability, I believe we can link pretty much everything we do to those. So it's critical. The code essentially seeks to elevate our industry significantly above any legal minimum. It's a high baseline, and a very high baseline at that. And it is adopted by everybody, and that's unique, and it's really allows us to drive forward improvements that we as a sector and that actually others out with the sector believe should be a part of our normal operational behaviour. So it's hugely important. Linking into those third-party accreditation schemes, the code as well is hugely important, because a lot of those schemes and a lot of retailers consider it as a given. This is the starting place. So if we embed the sustainability goals that we have and our achievement of those and our ability to achieve those within the code, then these things go hand in hand. Accreditation schemes, as you've alluded to, are hugely important. They demonstrate to everybody who wants to consume salmon and everybody who wants to be a part of our sector, what we're doing and how well we're performing. And we consider that they are effectively our own regulation as well. We talk about regulation. That's an added layer of regulation that we want to have ourselves to demonstrate where we're at. So where you have something like sustainability in our plans here, they can go hand in hand. And we've been, particularly in the welfare area, been speaking with some of those providers of standards, some of those retailers, to what they expect, and trying to ensure that the code delivers that baseline level where thereafter the sort of the higher standards can come over the top.
Yes, good. And your point, Ian, about the code being above legal minimum, as it were, requirements, that's important, because the question, I slightly paraphrased the question, but the question was also about, should it be, as it were, statutory? Well, I think our argument, would it not be that we're above statutory in that sense, in terms of our code? Would you like to just say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. We are above statutory. That code sits significantly above, but it is a requirement. It's a requirement of membership of our organisation, and it's something that everybody, all salmon farmers, have signed up to passionately, and nobody wants to leave it. Essentially. So it has that credence, and it has that rigour, which I believe is important. So in actual fact, sometimes we have seen regulation developing from that code, at the end of the day, and regulatory enforcement using the code as a framework. So very, very important.
Good, thank you for that. I'm going to go back to Kate and Joanna because there's a question about, which I think is a kind of nice way of summarising these things, but someone asks, what is, for the average person in the Highlands and Islands, what will the Charter mean for them and their communities? So, Kate, you've talked a lot today about communities. What do you think a Charter and all the actions within it could mean for communities that host fish farms around their coastline?
Well, I think firstly the Charter is an amazing document to have, and it provides the communities with a clearer picture of where we're aiming to go, where our targets are, and where as an industry we want to be. And I think for communities that's something that's really good for them to be able to delve into and to be able to see how as a sector we're driving to progress. I think the individual points of it, all being sustainability, are all wider reaching than just for our sector itself, and they will all have knock-on benefits for the areas that we operate, both environmentally and within the communities. And certainly a lot of the Charter is heavily focused on that being a good neighbour and being socially responsible and bringing good people into the area for full-time jobs, and just providing meaningful employment and being a meaningful part of the community. So I think that the value of it speaks for itself, basically.
Lovely, thank you for that. Joanna, do you want to have a take on this one in your area of skills and people? What does the Charter mean for you in that sense?
I think I would reiterate what Kate said. I think for our sector in particular, having a social license to operate is critical, and I think that Charter sets out the standards to which we're going to hold ourselves and which people can rely on holding us to. And you know, when we're talking about kind of employment, people aren't silly. They can see that and assess for themselves and hold us to account, and that's what makes us into a kind of sector of choice for the future.
Great, thank you for that. Ian, I'll give you the last word. Would you like to give us in probably 2 minutes max before we get cut off by our moderators here, just your perspective on why the Charter matters to people in the Highlands and Islands, and you might all well make the point about the rest of Scotland too, I guess. Thank you.
Well, I think it's important to them because it charts our future. It charts our commitment to being responsible and charts out our path ahead of us, and it takes everybody along with it. As I've said before, this is our salmon industry charter that includes all of those people who work with us, the producers, of course, but all of those stakeholders who are part of those communities, whether they work within our sector or whether they just live within the communities in which we operate. This is about all of our journey forwards, and so I think this charter is hugely important there. I think that might be being called to stop now. So
yeah, that's absolutely lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Can I just say on behalf of the SSPO, a big thanks to Ian, Joanna, and Kate for providing so many great answers today, and thank you for sending your questions in. I'm sorry we didn't answer them all, but very glad to have taken part in today. Back to Sherry.
Thanks ever so much, Tavish, and everyone on the panel today. Yes, you've had lots of questions, and there are still some that are unanswered. So we will try and liaise with the panel to get some answers to those questions after the event. I'd just like to remind everybody again that all of the sessions throughout the summit will be available for you to download from our website by the end of the week. Our last session of today will take place at 4 p.m. when our sponsors, DSM and Vera Maris, will be facilitating a panel discussion on healthy and sustainable fish, applying optimum nutrition to unlock the full potential. We hope to see you there, and thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you.